So the GAA Catfish story has finally landed in a court of law over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, the GAA Catfish, even the term itself was made famous by the Two Johnnies podcast. But the woman who claims she's been identified as this mystery woman appeared in court to stop her being subjected to a disciplinary proceeding in work.
Yeah, so Niamh Farrell, she has an address in Portsdown in Armagh, but she was teaching in Closh Aina in Rathfarnham. It's an all-boys school. She's the head of music there, and she also teaches Irish. So she brought this application to the High Court. It's called an ex parte application, which just means it's one side only heard. And it was basically looking to seek an injunction against the school from continuing a disciplinary process against her. It was said in court by her barrister that she'd gotten a report from the school ahead of a disciplinary meeting that was due to take place the following week, and the report basically detailed all these allegations against her, and she claimed that the process was completely unfair, that the allegations were completely untrue, that she was falsely identified online as this GAA Catfish. She's always denied that, and the judge granted the application, so basically injuncting the school from continuing this process, and then the case was put back. And when the school came before the courts, their barrister, their counsel, basically agreed to put a temporary halt on any disciplinary proceedings pending the decision of the court, basically.
Okay, so look, that's what happened in the courts.
Yeah.
But I suppose, what is the background? I mean, a lot of people will have heard the Two Johnnies podcast has been one of the most successful podcasts, in Irish history, I suppose. But really what it details is this bizarre story about a woman who's not identified in the podcast, who has gone around with fake identities, catfishing guys, and I presume most people know what catfishing is, but not everybody does. So.
You were looking up the description on Saturday. It was like it's Iran, where it first came from is weird, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's very complicated. I mean, it's something to do with where you put catfish into other. There's actually disputed, but one of them is that if you have a load of cod, you put a catfish in the middle to improve the whatever. So, but basically, it's about. It was a term used then in a documentary in the US, and it's now become, everybody probably has heard it. But what is it for those who haven't?
It's basically using fake online profiles and other people's pictures to pretend to be someone you're not, and to start relationships with people. Obviously, catfishing has been used for criminal pursuits in that, romance fraud and duping people into sending you money and stuff. In this case, that's not that. It's just basically this woman had started relationships with GAA players, and they believed that she was a really, really beautiful woman. She'd taken photographs from various different women in different countries. There was British influencers. I think there were some American people's photos used, and it's called the GAA Catfish because there was at least 40 people in the world of GAA and entertainment, which includes Johnny B from the Two Johnnies, that were duped by her, basically. Yeah,
I mean, we had a case recently, I think it's in France. It was another big sort of got a lot of publicity about a woman who thought she was in touch with Brad Pitt, and they had Brad Pitt, the catfisher had pictures of Brad Pitt, or somebody an AI generated Brad Pitt in hospital, and he was looking for money, and he said he was going through a divorce and he couldn't, Angelina wouldn't give him the money. So the woman sent him a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
And that's a criminal sort of catfish where somebody is basically trying to defraud people.
Yeah.
But this is a totally different story, because what the motives of the GAA Catfish are, it's not clear. She was never trying to get money out of people or even free stuff or anything like that.
No, it just seemed to be pursuing. I suppose you have to think of it in the context of the Two Johnnies have a massive following, particularly in rural areas of Ireland, with younger men, big into GAA, into that kind of stuff. And it was, I suppose, targeting them because, there would be a big, in Ireland, particularly, in every county, I suppose, GAA players would have, be seen in a certain way, and I guess, a certain popularity. So I guess, that was sort of maybe taken advantage by this catfish, because, you know, she was posting pictures pretending to be these, like, as I think the two Johnnies described the first woman. So the first alias was Cora O'Donovan, and she was described as a Nicole Scherzinger lookalike. So everybody knows what she looks like from the two Pussycat Dolls, you know. So I guess it was to strike up relationships, and the person behind the account seemed to have a lot of information in relation to GAA, into Irish culture, you know, talking on her profile of being like a Gaeilgeoir and all this kind of thing. And I suppose what really duped the people involved was that she had somehow managed to obtain like 15,000 followers on different accounts. And these were like, you know, genuine followers, because Johnny B actually said that he looked and he had friends in common, and that kind of eased his nerves.
No, look, and I get that how she did it is ingenious enough. And I suppose you could see how the men would respond. It's just, it's not, I don't understand what the purpose of it for her is. Like, that's the bit that I don't understand. Because
it's not. You need to speak to a psychologist.
Well, I suppose so. Well, no, I know.
The two Johnnies had a psychologist on. Yeah. They were explaining around, you know, how people kind of get lost in other identities, and, you know, obviously need to can't hold down their own relationships. And there's all these different psychological reasons behind it. But it seemed to be, you know, that they, you know, just the fact that it was focused particularly in entertainment and GA worlds, it seemed to be obtaining something that maybe you wouldn't get yourself. Yeah. You know, because obviously you're going for a standard of people that would have, let's be honest, a lot of options, and maybe have be living a certain life, and maybe, I'm not saying this is what happened, but sometimes these catfish do think that they have to pretend to be someone else in order to sort of reach that standard.
So there's maybe some reflected glory, but it's unusual in that, look, there's no financial motive, or there's no, like, she can never meet them if she pretends to look like, unless Nicole Scherzinger is going to come along in her place and pretend to be her. But, you know, so
that's part of like the intrigue of
that's this. That's part of the intrigue, exactly. Yeah. Is that, like, you know, it's not, look, it's obviously not normal, but it's what drives it. So anyway, it came out, that podcast, it was a huge hit. They had a further update as this GAA Catfish, it was suspected she'd reappeared basically online after she'd gone quiet after, the first bit of the podcast, and then it appears to have turned up. Now, they never named her at all during any of this process. They did describe knowing who she was through various clues, and also through a meeting that occurred.
Yeah, well, they claim to have met her, because I suppose to give, it's a very complicated story. This is 3 podcasts, and we're not doing 3 podcasts. No. So, but I suppose it started because Johnny B told, I think it's 2021, he became single, and this beautiful woman, the Nicole Scherzinger lookalike, had followed him on Instagram. He said one day I should throw her a message. They spent weeks messaging, voice noting, and when he tried to meet up with her, there was various different, like, I got COVID-19, my aunt has died, all of these kind of things. Then one night, himself and Johnny Smacks, his co-host on the two Johnnies, went to a bar in Dublin, and this girl who they described as Nikki, Cora's housemate, turned up and kept saying, the bar was packed, Cora's around here somewhere, Cora's around here somewhere. Cora never showed up. And then the next day he got messages from Cora saying, I'm so sorry, come to my house for breakfast. He went to the house, and Nikki was there again and made him breakfast and said Cora's gone to the shop. So things like this kept happening. Yeah. Eventually then, that was sort of when, I think Nikki actually gave him a lift home. Yeah. She was going out with a county player close to him. So it was this whole elaborate web of lies. Eventually they started digging, and then in the first podcast they basically came to a conclusion. They used the match voices from voice clips and all of this kind of thing, came to the conclusion that they believed that Cora was fake, that it was Nikki doing all of this.
Now, Nikki is not a real name.
No, Nikki's not her real name. No, they call her that in the podcast. Yeah. Then the second podcast basically describes how all of these GA stars, some of them very well-known GA players, nobody named, but they use names like County Connor, Manager Mick. So there was 40 people allegedly catfished by the woman they named Nikki. And then in the third podcast, it got quite dark then, because, that was 2022. And then there was a bit of a gap. And then they did a new podcast in January where basically they said that they were contacted by people saying that this profile called it was Aoife was the name of the profile, but they believed it was being run by the same woman, and that she had basically duped a couple of different one particular GAA player. She'd used photos of his child on his social media, and she basically, I think there was one player that she was messaging for a couple of years, like really, like this was going on for a long time, and there was various things, like she got match tickets off one player, and then he'd seated her beside his parents, and then when the person that ended up sitting beside the parents was an old man, so the tickets were obviously swapped before. So all of these bizarre stories, but in the third installment it got quite dark, because this particular player that she was messaging, she was saying how she was raped by another GAA player and she was forced to have an abortion. So this is when the story really got I suppose dark. And then this is only a couple of months ago, so obviously things started really ramping up again, and there had been different photos circulating. We've seen
so this is I suppose what's underneath it all.
Yeah,
like they never named her. They never identified her either. Like they had some features of it, but either way, in the way of the world it is now, is this person started being named on, or this woman who we can say is Niamh Farrell now, because she's been named in court, was being identified on the internet. You saw it on Twitter. There was pictures put up of her by various people. Anything that goes on social media, anything can be put up by anybody. But her name became in the ether, I suppose. Now, she wasn't named in any newspaper, any media organisation, but certainly it became, a lot of people knew about it, and people would send it to each other. And they had this name, Niamh Farrell, the teacher in Closh Aina in Rathfarnham. So at some point, Niamh Farrell has obviously gone to a solicitor. When she got the school, obviously, if we're hearing it, the school are hearing it as well, and they've obviously initiated some sort of disciplinary process. And they've highlighted in the fact on some documents about how they've been contacted by parents in the school, I think it was said, and how but she is now in these court proceedings. Niamh Farrell has clearly and categorically stated she is not the GAA Catfish.
Yeah. So basically, back in 2022, when the first two podcasts came out, the teachers, these rumours have been going on for that long, and teachers in the school apparently had made complaints that, it was putting pressure on them, that there was, there were certain things that had been said, and, it wasn't... it was basically distracting from what their jobs and all this kind of thing. And, Niamh Farrell actually took 2 weeks off sick leave at the time because of the stress. She always denied that these rumours weren't true, that she was named by people unknown to her. And then it did die down, I believe. And then when this third podcast came out, then obviously the rumours and the online speculation ramped up again. There was photos going around. And essentially what was said in court was that she got a report ahead of a meeting with the school board. She got a report of allegations against her, and in the report it detailed how then 60 students' parents came forward, and some of them were threatening to protest outside of the school, saying that these allegations were basically they really wanted action on the back of it, that they were really worried about the allegations. And then in the report as well, the school principal, she said that the school principal said that Niamh Farrell had accepted that she was the GAA Catfish, and she said she never accepted this. She said that what she did say was she accepted that the rumours were about her, but she never accepted she was the GAA Catfish. She also said that there were welfare checks done by the PSNI and the Gardaí, and she said that this was kind of she claims that this was couched in the report, that she was contacted by them on foot of some kind of allegations, and she was saying this wasn't it at all. I was only contacted about my welfare because I was accused of being this person who I wasn't online. So she was basically saying that the procedures that the school were carrying out were not fair, and that basically she wasn't sure what the allegations were because she had obviously she knew what the allegations were, but what her misconduct was, because she had an unblemished record up until then. I think she was a teacher there since 2019, and she was really held in high regard. And she was just saying that they were trying to claim that she'd brought the school into disrepute, but she completely denied this.
So we spoke to her mother over the weekend, Pat O'Connell. Sunday World Reporter spoke to her. What did her mother have to say about it all?
So her mother basically, she said that she wanted to leave it in the hands of solicitors, but she said, I can't really speak about it. She said it's with their legal team, but she also basically described it as a nightmare. She said it's a lot of pressure. She said her heart goes out to her daughter. She also said that, she was asked, would it help now if does she want the trolls to leave her daughter alone? And she kind of said, I don't think it would matter because it's gone on for so long. She said enough is enough. She described it as horrendous, a total nightmare for the family. And, she said, she's basically said, how much more can she take? That's what I'm worried about. But it's in the hands of the lawyers. I don't want to say anything because I'm afraid of saying the wrong thing. I just know the impact it's having on her and the impact it's having on the family. It's just not right.
Yeah. And have we heard anything from the two Johnnies? I mean, they obviously publicised the podcast, but they haven't really commented on any further developments, have they?
No. And I suppose at the time of the third podcast being publicised a couple of months ago, we were trying to contact them and they didn't come back to us. We were doing a story on it. So they have said on their podcast that, take everything with a pinch of salt. There's a lot of untruths going around online. They said that we were never going to identify her. They said, that they had asked for welfare checks in relation to the catfish, that they didn't want any kind of... They basically wanted to raise awareness about being careful online, but they weren't trying to basically
identify
anybody or, make anybody the subject of...
basically internet rumours and all of that.
Exactly, yeah. So to my knowledge, they haven't commented, and based on what they've said, I don't think they will. I suppose it's a court matter now. But I guess we also, Patrick O'Connell approached Niamh Farrell, and she just said she didn't want to comment. But there are photographs of her now. This is the woman that's at the centre of the court case, but she obviously denies the allegations.
Yeah, so I mean, what happens now with these hearings are they can go on obviously for a long time and papers will be served. Both sides will have a right to see what the other side's case is. These can run into huge bills, of course, any sort of court proceedings for both the school or for Niamh Farrell. There's a huge risk involved in them. But they're due back in court in a couple of weeks, but it'll probably be a sort of a procedural hearing, I would imagine, rather than a full-on hearing of the case.
Yeah, it's back in 2 weeks for basically they are going to put in sworn statements responding to Niamh Farrell's affidavit. So she obviously took this after she was told about the meeting with the school and the report that was made. So the school hadn't had chance to put their statements into the court. So basically they'll be putting in their sworn statements in response to what she said. And that's supposed to happen in 2 weeks. But we're not sure if that will be full details of their case or if it will, as you said, if it will just be a procedural thing. But these things can tend to go on for a long time and raise huge bills, no doubt about it. But we'll be back to cover them when they come back. Absolutely.
Okay, thanks, Eimear.
Thanks, man.
Robbie Lawler was out of control.
This is Double Cross, the murder of Robbie Lawler.
It was going to be an all-out war with him in the middle of it.
A Crime World special investigation podcast based on my new book, Web of Betrayal, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.